All right. So we'll get started. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So welcome and good evening, everyone. My name is Maryam Mohammed, and I'm a part of our peer counseling support team. And today I'm also going to be your host. So thank you for joining us for our 6th workshop in this series, Family Dynamics, in collaboration with Bell Let's Talk. So through our partnership, what we're doing is we're hosting a series of virtual workshops called Her Wellness Journey. These workshops are designed to improve Muslim women's access to social supports, build self-esteem and emotional well-being. So before we begin, a few housekeeping rules to ensure our workshop runs smoothly. 1, please ensure your mic is off so the session is uninterrupted. 2, if you have any questions, for those on Zoom, please use the Q&A window to ask questions to the host and panelists. We will either reply back to you via text in the QA window or answer your questions during the live. For those on Facebook, welcome. Please share your questions in the comment section and it will be answered during the live. We will also be sharing polling questions during the presentation to keep you engaged and help us understand you, your needs and preferences for future workshops. Now, without further ado, this evening we are joined by our honored guest, Reena Vanza, to discuss how to navigate challenging family dynamics. So Reena Vanza is a registered psychotherapist who works with individuals, couples, and groups with a focus on trauma, anxiety, grief, depression, parenting, and burnout. She has been in the mental health field for over 15 years with experience in research, teaching, supervision, case management, and has been a stout advocate in community mental health. In addition to her role at Cedarway Therapy, she leads mental health teams nationally across Canada for transitional homes that support women and children escaping violence. As a psychotherapist, she provides compassionate supports as her clients face their challenges. She has been instrumental in working with women and children escaping violence, survivors of trauma, those who have lost a loved one, and those experiencing transitions in family life and burnout at home or work. So please join me in welcoming Reena. Assalamu alaikum, Reena. How are you doing this evening?
Walaikum salam. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to this presentation with the Nisa Helpline in collaboration with Bell Let's Talk.
Amazing. I cannot wait for us to get started. Thank you for joining us. So before we begin, please respond to the following first set of survey questions I mentioned earlier. If you feel uncomfortable responding, that is also okay. You are not obligated to answer them. Your replies will remain anonymous. Though for those who choose to respond, just know that. We'll give you 1 to 2 minutes and then proceed with the presentation. Just a few more seconds. All right, great. Thank you all for your input. And Reena, the stage is yours.
All right. I'm wondering what the answers to that poll were. Where's the majority of people joining us from? Or does it take time to kind of calculate that? I'll wait for the results while I talk about the disclaimer. So just like every mental health presentation, I have a disclaimer here that today is a general discussion about family dynamics. Just remember, interventions for specific situations should be tailored and adapted to the characteristics and dynamics of the families seeking support. If you are looking for support about a specific situation in your family, feel free to reach out to me on the information provided at the end of this presentation, and I can guide you towards resources or connect you to a mental health professional. And so this presentation, what it is this is a psychoeducational presentation. It will help you identify some issues within yourself or dynamics in your family that you may want to seek additional support for. This is not in any way me speaking to a specific situation or a specific family, or it is not diagnostic in nature. We will talk about what makes a healthy family, understanding the various influences on family. We'll also kind of get into what gets in the way of a healthy family. I will have some practical strategies for parents, which include how to self-regulate and engage in something we call emotional coaching that helps parents connect to their children. And briefly, we will get into something called mindful parenting. And so by the end of this presentation, what I'd love for you guys to take away is to be aware of factors that can contribute to strained relationships within families, to learn what makes stronger attachment and connections to children, and also to take home strategies that can help you reflect inwards and work on yourselves as parents and caregivers. And so a lot of the times people ask me what I see in a clinical setting, like people don't know, why do families come to therapy? A lot of people don't think that they should be seeking family therapy because they don't fit into whatever they think family therapy is about. And so I just wanted to bring this to you guys, what we see in the clinic in terms of people that seek family therapy. We see things like people or families that have adolescents or children that have diagnosed or undiagnosed behavioral academic concerns. We see people with mental health concerns. Sometimes a family member has anxiety or depression or other mood disorders. Once again, this can be diagnosed or undiagnosed issues. We see things like separation and divorce or blended family adjustments, people with chronic illnesses, that taking care of a family member that has a chronic illness can be very taxing. So a lot of families come to get support on how to do that. We do see parents and or youth that engage in substance abuse and addictions issues, grief, so death of a loved one, either they've lost a sibling or a parent or a grandparent that was very important to them. A lot of the times people come in because they just say things like, Reena, we have communication breakdowns. We have this sense of brokenness within the family, and we want to, bring us together again and become a cohesive unit. And then finally, we see young children, parents, teens come in with family members because they have different and or competing values. So we do have a poll for this one, I believe. I will give a second for you guys to put the poll up. And what I'm interested in learning is, do you guys recognize any of these within your own family systems? Give you about 20 seconds to answer that. All right, Mariam, you think that's good enough time?
I think that's more than enough.
Okay. And so, yeah, we have, oh, wow. Is it 100%? Absolutely. Yeah. So every single one of you that's on this presentation today has recognized something or the other that they could seek help for, or know someone that they could refer to for seeking help. And that's sort of like to destigmatize, family therapy, to help people to actually come out and seek support, because as you can see, majority of us do see these within our own family systems or other people. And so just, talking about what are the key factors of a healthy family. And I'm sure if you go Google this, you'll find love and affection, things like mutual respect, effective communication, having shared values and goals, spending quality time together, the ability to resolve conflict in a healthy way, having boundaries, having adaptability and flexibility, and shared responsibilities. Now, this is something you'll quickly get. As soon as you Google, you'll get this, right? And a lot of people say, I know this. I know the key factors that contribute to healthy families, but I know this, and why is my family still struggling, right? So we really want to get into what are the factors that cause these things to not contribute to us having a healthy family. So in the previous slide, I showed you the factors that contribute to us having a healthy family. What essentially an unhealthy family is the breakdown of these very things. So we want to ask ourselves, right? Like, why don't we spend quality time together anymore? Why do we constantly fight? Why once when I was so flexible and I was, adaptable, am I so rigid today? Why don't I feel like my children love me as much as they did when they were 2 years old? So some of the issues that we have to consider are, Things like undiagnosed mental health issues can cause a breakdown in these factors, right? Conflicting parenting styles, ineffective parenting styles. So maybe I'm parenting my 8-year-old in the same way that I'm parenting my 18-year-old, right? Undiagnosed behavioral issues. Your child may be suffering through a certain issue and you blame it on something like bad behavior, right? Cultural differences, intergenerational differences between immigrant parents and children that are born here, or just cultural differences of Canadian values versus your own values that you bring from your own family systems. Things like financial constraints or other social determinants of health. And what that basically is are conditions in the environment that affect a person's health outcomes. These are things like education access, quality, social and community context, the neighborhood you live in. If you live in a neighborhood that is, struck with poverty or drugs, then it's going to affect your family more than if you don't. Changes in family structure, like I said, loss of a loved one or a divorce, things like that. And then lack of support for the family unit. So, are you part of organizations and communities that support the family? Do you have other family members that support you? All these things together can affect the very factors that we know to create a healthy family. And so the key issues that influence families are, a lot of times parents think that it's friends in school. We get a lot of parents say, my daughter or my son, they're with the wrong crowd. My daughter or son, they're disrespectful. It's social media. They spend a lot of time on internet and Instagram and things like that. Or it's because we fight and argue that we don't have good relationships. Once again, absolutely. But this is just the surface level, right? What it actually is value differences. It's communication blocks. It's boundaries. So we don't know when to say no. We don't know when to say yes. It's emotional blocks. I don't know what I'm feeling, so I'm not okay with what my child is feeling. It's unsafe presence. So children are constantly asking, can I trust my parents to get it? Will they shout at me? Will they yell? Will they belittle my experience? And these are the things, these are the surface levels is what the parents usually think, but there's a lot going on underneath that we have to unpack as to why the children are being influenced by social media or they're being disrespectful. And so you may wonder, is there anything I can do to create better relationships in my family? We always have to hold on to hope, right? Families by nature don't want conflict and don't want to feel disconnected. I never have a family that comes into therapy and says, we're so connected, can you help us disconnect, right? Because that's not the fitra, that's not the way we are designed. We're designed to regulate and connect with each other. And so working on connection is very possible, no matter what is going on in your family. If you have the right support, the right environment, the right tools, it's very possible to create healthy relationships. And so the question, right? How can we form good relationships? So what we want to do here is we want to talk about, what's happening for me as a caregiver or a parent. So this presentation here is not about how do I fix my child. A lot of the times parents come in and we want to fix that child. We want to make them stop behaving a certain way. We want to take away their friends, and we may resort to punitive resources. We're always trying to punish that child or fix that child. Today's session, I'm really taking you inside. I'm inviting you as a parent, as a caregiver, to look inside. What can I do first for myself so that I can present myself in a safer way for my child, so that we can then work through all the conflict or whatever it is that's going on? So, the first point here is address what's happening for you. We have to engage in self-regulation practices, like emotional regulation strategies for myself. If I've grown up in a family or a culture where my own emotions are not validated, I may not think that my children's emotions are worth being validated, right? So we say things like, get over it. I went through it. It's nothing big. We want to watch out for these things. And there are strategies that you can implement to be more regulated and to learn emotional regulation for yourself. In terms of working with children, I will get into this in the next few slides, is something we call emotional coaching. And we also want to live by example, right? So what are our values? How do we cultivate these values? What happens when my child grows up and their values don't align with mine? Did I For example, if prayer is important to me, but I haven't ever prayed, and then now my child turns 16 and I'm enforcing prayer on them, is that how I cultivated this value? I have to really reflect on what am I doing as a parent? And the big question, am I safe for my children? I said this in the earlier slide. Our kids are always asking this question. Will my parents shout, judge, or criticize me? Or will they support me? Will they talk to me and be there for me? All behavior is communication. So whether you have an 18-year-old engaging in behavior that you don't approve, whether you have a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum, that behavior is telling you something. They're not doing it to get you angry, to make you feel bad about yourself. Your child is communicating in the forms of using behavior. And so what gets in our way? You know, I said earlier on too, what's happening for you? And that's the big question I ask people that come to see me. What's happening for you in a certain situation? We have our own emotions to deal with that, you know, are informed from our childhood experiences, our past. We have a narrative in our mind that's going on. And so when my child does something that's against what I value or what I think they should be doing, something happens for me. I start to feel angry, or I start to feel betrayed, or I start to feel shame. And I start to ask questions like, you know, am I a bad parent? What are people going to say? And I get stuck in my narrative. So now I've gone beyond what's happening for my child, but I start getting stuck in me, right? So now I'm not addressing the child. I'm starting to get stuck in my narrative that's going to make me feel a certain way. So the question I ask people all the time is, are you even able to label that emotion? Because we know that emotions give different messages. If I'm sad, it's going to propel me to do something different from when I'm angry, right? So do I, as a parent, as a caregiver, understand how I process emotions, what I do when I feel a certain type of emotion? What do I say to myself about my child's behavior, right? Like, is this something that's never going to be fixable versus hope? What meaning do I make that when my child does something, is that a bad child, right? Do I just give up hope in ever helping that child? Am I afraid of judgment from others, judgment from self? Not, you know, in the community that we work with, we're very afraid of what other people think. So when my child is doing something, I move away again from what's happening with that child, what that child is trying to say to me through their behavior, and I'm focused on what others are going to say about what's happening. So I ask you to reflect on me versus the child, right? And I said to you earlier, all behavior is communication. And so without this reflection, I know I'm taking you guys inside, right? I said this presentation is not really about fixing this child. It's really about reflecting on you as a parent, as a caregiver, because without this reflection, your child will not feel heard, understood, or validated, right? They will move away from talking to you and they'll seek this elsewhere. So we wonder why our friends go to friends more often, or go to school and talk to teachers or guidance counselors before they come to us, is because they're not feeling validated and heard in ways that they want to be, right? And when this starts happening, you'll feel more threatened in the relationship and you'll push more. So now my child doesn't want to talk to me, and I'm not being self-reflective, and I'm not becoming safe for them. So I will push more. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that, because I'm trying to connect in ways that are not good, right? So you get stuck in this vicious cycle, and the distance between family members starts to grow. Without safety, there is no true relationship. Children are not looking to us to throw our own adult tantrums, right? So when we don't get them, or we don't like something they're doing, we quickly go into anger outbursts or reinforce punishment as a way of control. This is not what they're looking for. As I said, your child is looking to feel heard, understood, and validated, because through that behavior, they are saying something to you. And so we find that in connected families, instead of ignoring differences, comparing to others, having this authoritarian parenting style, which is more about discipline and control, instead of being dismissive and avoidant, what they try to do is acknowledge the differences and foster an environment for the child. So I didn't say the word acceptance here, right? It's acknowledge. And there's a very big difference between accepting and acknowledging. They're focused on what's happening for their family versus what's happening for other families. I asked you to take a look at the narrative, right? We often go into so-and-so is not, or how come their family or that 18-year-old girl or boy is, right? The focus becomes other people. We want to focus on what's happening here and now. The practices are more authoritative parenting, which is more about limits and connection as opposed to discipline and control. They acknowledge their children, right? They acknowledge that they're going through something, and they approach. So it's moving towards the child instead of moving away from the child. And so here's an example that, let's say, I would see, right, in the Muslim community. Sarah is a 13-year-old who got her period and wants to wear hijab, but expresses she doesn't feel ready. She says not all her friends do. She feels hot and it'll be hard to play sports. And yes, she also feels like she'll be judged and won't look pretty. So this type of narrative here or story starts to, get a lot of parents to go into this place of judgment and shame and start to question, what are people going to say? And they get stuck in that type of narrative, right? And so an avoidant parent style would be something like the parents don't want to discuss the matter and remind Sarah that this was already discussed last year and she has no choice in the matter. And what happens here is Sarah would, she'd feel disappointed, and her parents would say to her something like, I'm disappointed in you. And she would see that, and she would see that her parents are angered, right? In an approaching parenting style, her parents would set up times where they would talk to Sarah to speak about these concerns, express their concerns so she can understand why they're being persistent. The conversation is an open one and an ongoing one with Sarah. Sarah can see disappointment, but understands why, right? She feels heard and validated and is more open to keeping the conversation going. So this becomes a dialogue in where I am here for you. I am safe for you. Yes, I may not be happy because of this and this reason, but it's not forced on the child's life, because the consequence of that is most probably the child will just cover their tracks and do whatever they want to do. And that's not a healthy family unit. That's just parental control that's going wrong in the child's life, right? And a second example here would be something like, so Adam is a 16-year-old who got caught vaping. Again, something we see so much of. And the parents, the avoidant style parents, don't talk about what happened, right? But they've expressed to him this is despicable in their eyes. They're ashamed and angry, and his phone gets taken away, as well as limiting his time with friends. And Adam thinks his parents really don't get it, and in fact don't even care. What do you think Adam's going to do here? Right? He might continue, he might hide it, he might do other behaviors that are trying to tell his parents, listen to me, right? I want to talk to you, but you're not open to me. And so we want to look at an approaching parent style where, again, parents sit him down and try to understand what led Adam to this behavior. Is he trying to fit in? Is he stressed? Is he not thinking about the consequences of his actions? You want to ask yourself why this has troubled you as a parent and explain that to him as well. What you want from him, and what you fear from him. Adam starts to feel heard and realizes his parents care and are concerned, and he may be more open to talking about it and reflecting on the long-term consequences of his actions. Now, I know this sounds kind of like so ideal, right? Like, how do you do this, Reena? I'm so angry. He's breaking values and he's going against our family rules and all that stuff. And how do you do this approaching stuff? We'll talk about it later on the slides. This is where I'm asking you to reflect and work on the strategies within yourself. Do we do this in clinic? Absolutely, right? We want to, if we don't regulate, if we don't understand what's going on for us and don't work with our own anxieties, those will come out on our children. And we're not going to be able to connect with them in ways that make them feel safe enough to come to us with whatever it is that they're going through. And so this is why I always take parents into that engagement with themselves first before they start to focus on fixing that bad behavior in their child. And so one of the strategies that is very popular is the emotion coaching. And this is a Gottman, it's in John Gottman's book, and it's also an EFFT technique for those that know what I'm talking about here. It's basically a strategy that we teach parents in how to connect with their children, how to communicate in a way that is more receptive and builds relationships. So as the slide says, it's a parenting strategy that helps children develop emotional intelligence as well as parents. So now you're teaching your child how to communicate through emotions, how to verbalize their emotions. And you're working on that, within yourself as well. And so when I said earlier that all behavior is communication, if children don't know how to communicate their emotions, or you're not safe enough for them to feel like they can tell you what they're feeling, then they're going to communicate through behavior, just like parents, right? Like if I can't tell you, Adam, this makes me angry, then I'm going to slam my door and become punitive, right? Because we don't have the vocabulary to speak in emotional terms. So emotional coaching, briefly, is 5 steps. And so people that engage in this type of work are very aware of their child's emotion. They recognize their child's expression of emotion is a moment of connection and teaching, not a moment of avoidance. So, Aisha slams the door. I could be like, okay, I'm just going to ignore that because I don't want to deal with her. Or I could wonder, what's Aisha going through, right? Can I ask her, Aisha, was school okay? Is there anything I can help you with? We have 2 choices there. They listen with empathy and validate their child's feelings. So once again, validate's important. I can recognize that Aisha is upset, right? I can recognize that this made her angry. You help your child to learn and label their emotion with words, like I said previously, but we want to, as parents and caregivers, we want to work on that for ourselves first. There's something called the emotional wheel, and I ask you guys, to Google it and take a look. Are you able to label your emotions just using those that wheel that has anger, sadness, and do you understand how those show up in your body? What do you do when you're angry? How do you process that? Do you process anger in a healthy manner, right? And so the last step of emotion coaching is setting limits when you're helping your child to solve problems or deal with upsetting situations. So it's not about free for all and you can step all over me. It's about communicating limits as well. And this is something that we can work on ourselves and teach our children. So research has found that, emotion coaching parents are aware of their own emotions and their children. So not only when Aisha slams the door because she's so angry, right? Anyone can recognize an emotion there. Even a little baby can recognize when their parent is slamming something, but they're aware of the low intensity emotions, like how she starts behaving when she's starting to feel a certain way. And if we can get it there, we don't have to wait till it goes to an intensity of 100, right? As I said earlier, you're using these emotional moments as opportunity to connect and teach how to effectively regulate, so we can talk post emotion. They can see things from a child's perspective and validate how the child feels. When their child expresses emotions, they verbally, label them. I can see that you're angry. I see that this makes you feel upset. And then again, they problem solve with their child. They set limits, discuss goals, and they're finding strategies to deal with the situation that cause that so-called negative emotion. So we usually say things like, it's no big deal. It's okay. You can get it next time. Just let it go because I said so, right? My favorite one. You should be happy and grateful instead. Count your blessings. We want to try and just say things like, I can see how this has made you feel. This must be hard. I can see you struggling with it. Sometimes it's hard to let go of feelings. I'm here when you need me. Essentially, you're just acknowledging and validating that child's experience. And I know I'm rushing through so much because there's so much information when it comes to family dynamics. And obviously you can always reach out if you have specific questions. Okay, and so the change starts to happen when you start to send this message of, it's okay to feel whatever it is that you're feeling. I hear you, I'm here for you, I'll stay with you, I'm listening to you, and yes, I do care. Because I want you guys to remember, your child is asking, am I allowed to feel? Are they listening to me? Are they getting me? Will they be here for me no matter what? Do they actually care? Right? And so when we do this, a lot of parents say, oh, this is going to dilute my power. It's opening, it's just, they're going to walk all over me. Actually, quite the opposite. If we do this correctly, it opens up the channels of communication and creating that safety within the family. So now your child can come to you and you can solve your problems and you can help regulate them. And when we co-regulate each other in a family, and we can go through things, because not having problems is not the solution here, because that's just not human. We're going to have these problems, but it's how do we go through these problems? Will my parents be safe for me when I go through these problems? And so when you're engaging in these strategies, you're actually creating that safety within your family unit. And so very quickly, I'll touch on mindful parenting. Again, a lot on Google and a lot of books on this, but basically it's bringing your conscious attention to what's happening for you in your present moment, right? Instead of being hijacked by, I'm angry and how dare they, and this is shameful and all this judgment, you're here and now, right? You're letting go of that guilt and shame, and you're focused on what am I going to do now with this child of mine that's trying to tell me something. It's about accepting whatever is going on right now instead of trying to change or ignore it. Remember, it's not what you want it to be, it's what it is. It's not how this could have been or should have been, but again, it's what it is. And it's not what's happening for others, but it's what's happening for us. And so mindful parenting is all about that present moment, grounding. You want to be aware of what's happening for you, your senses in this very moment. You want to slow things down. My child did this, I'm jumping to conclusions about, they're going to fail in life. They're never going to get married. They're going to go start doing drugs. Slow things down, right? When we think and we add more thoughts to whatever's going on without evidence of what's actually going on, it's just fuel to a fire. And our thoughts can take us to very, very creative places. And that could not, even be the reality of what you're dealing with, but you've allowed yourself to jump to very far conclusions. And so I talk to people a lot about inner resourcing, like your own resources that you can use, right? It's about self-care, managing my own emotions and managing my own stress, asking yourself, how do I manage my anger, right? How do I manage my stress? How do I inner resource myself? And so here's very quickly a few strategies. We talk about self-care. And I know you guys know how to Google these things and find self-care strategies, but I want to ask you today to ask yourself, do I exist apart from this family? What's my identity within this family, right? Do I exercise, engage in sports? Do I go for walks? Do I have something called me time where I pray or read just for me, right? Do I do things according to my values? If I want my children to do things according to our values, do we have shared values that I show I engage in? Do I connect with others? I talk a lot about emotional awareness, right? What's happening for me? Validating my own experience and my feelings, because if I don't know how to do that for myself and I don't know how it feels, I'm not going to do that for my loved ones. Do I know how to calm down? I always tell people between stimulus and response. So, stimulus are things that happen in the world, and the response is what we do. So the phone rings, I pick it up, right? I go outside, I just start walking. With all this stimuli in the world, there's a pause. Something happens, I don't have to react right away. I can pause in between and figure out what I need to do. And that comes with emotional regulation. If I'm able to increase the space between that pause, right, between the stimulus and the response, so increase the pause, the better options I will choose for my family. There are supports out there. You're not alone. There's other parents in similar situations, classes, workshops, local centers, mosques, and libraries. There's support that we wanted to sort of touch on. So there's this type of support and this professional help where you're calling people that are trained to actually break down each thing I talked to you about today and adapt it to your families and get to the goals that you want to get to for yourself and your family. I did want a quick slide here, although this can take an entire presentation, to focus a little bit on the single parenting. And although I'm just going to jot these out, these are huge issues. It's very different for someone who is a single parent. Their challenges and barriers are very different, right? They may not have the time two parents have. They may have financial security problems, support networks that have been lost, health issues, stress, So if you are someone that is single parenting, your situation is very unique and requires a very unique approach. So reach out for support. There's always something that, you know, is out there that can help you to reach your goals as a parent as well. And the last thing I'd like to talk to people about is building self-agency. Anytime that we start to despair and feel that we don't have agency in something, this is when we're prone to feel things like very anxious or depression. And so we want to always come back to, no matter what's going on in this family, what is my self-agency here? I'm focused on building the resources to support myself and my family. So this is where things like professional support, talking to a trained or licensed mental health counselor, professional, talking to your family doctor for assessments if you suspect something. Referrals and resources can be also provided by doctors. A local leader in the mosque that has training that includes counseling, reaching out to your friends and social networks for that type of support. We really want to beware of isolation. You're not the only family going through it, I guarantee you. Whatever it is that you are going through, you are not the only family that's going through it, okay? 211 is in Ontario for community resources. There are distress lines out there that are 24 hours. I know Nisa Helpline will put their information here after my presentation, where they have trained counselors that can help you to connect to counselors and to connect with other resources in the community where you can get that support. And so remember that a healthy family is not without challenges, but it has the dynamics within it to allow them to work through the trials. We're creating a nurturing and safe environment for all its members. The goal, if your goal is to be without challenges, that is probably a very unreachable goal. I don't think that's even possible. But can we reach a place where we are emotionally regulated and safe for our families, where our families can come together and go through problems? Absolutely, I've seen that happen. And I believe that with the right tools and resources and environments, people can thrive within the family systems that they have. Just reach out for help so somebody out there can help figure that out for you. And so you guys heard, my name is Reena Vanza. I am a registered psychotherapist. I'm the co-director. I'm the director and co-founder of Cedar Way Therapy. And what we are is a clinic that offers psychoeducational, psychological assessments, diagnosis, and treatment. We have psychologists, registered social workers, and registered psychotherapists. We do work with people across the lifespan, and we do offer multiple language services. My email is on this slide, and I'm sure Nisa Helpline will give it to you if you need it. You can follow me professionally. And I think there is also a link to a Navigating Family Dynamics booklet that was developed by me that Nisa Helpline will be offering you guys as a downloadable link that you can get after this presentation. And that's what the cover looks like. And I'm sorry, I think I kind of mulled through the poll questions. Mariam, you feel free to put them up now if you want, and then I will open up myself to questions. And I do know I went through a lot of material. Each slide could probably be an hour of a workshop, but I just wanted to throw everything out there so you guys have stuff to think about. And I'm here for any questions, starting whenever Mariam is ready. Thank you, Mariam.
No worries. Thank you so much. Don't worry about the poll questions. We had more than enough engagement with the questions coming in. So we're good to get started with the questions. You did an excellent job, Reena. And I really liked how at the end you said that if you're looking to live a life without challenge, like it's not going to happen. Right. So it was much needed to be said. All right, so thank you very much again, Reena. I hope you all enjoyed this amazing presentation. So we've now reached the Q&A segment of our session. And Reena, we have a few questions for you. So we'll see how many we can work through. And then of course, if questions don't get answered, you can always reach out to Reena yourself. So number one is, a lot of people don't see substance abuse and addictions to be a problem in the Muslim community. Is this a common thing you've witnessed within the Muslim community, and think it should be a priority in learning to navigate for community leaders and helpers? And then underneath that, it's, have you noticed an increase amongst youth?
Yes, absolutely. It is a problem within our community. We would be foolish to ignore it. We do see this in clinic. We do see this people come in all the time because it could be either parents or youth that are, addicted to substances, addicted to gaming, anything that helps numb them. So it's absolutely a problem in the Muslim community. I am in complete accordance with, yes, leaders getting educated on how to identify, how to provide proper resources and referrals to youth and families that are suffering through this problem. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And then our next question is, how can we navigate different parenting styles in joint households? So like, for example, grandparents versus daughter-in-law versus like son-in-law. This question was asked quite a bit. I know someone else worded it in a different way, which was more so, how do you parent with a partner who has a different communication style than you? So just overall, how do we parent with these differences?
Yeah, absolutely. This is such an excellent therapy question, right? This is something exactly a parent or two parents would come in for. And I don't have an answer that would probably be very satisfying right now without actually getting to know the dynamics. But what I always tell parents is, what is your end goal with your parenting? And so in our culture and in the culture that we are all part of, I know that joint family systems are a very big influence. And so I urge two parents to kind of figure out, what are your goals for your children? And there's a difference. This is why we're called parents versus grandparents versus aunts and uncles, right? Who's making the rules for that parenting? And so if we can strengthen couples to, in their marriages and create shared goals for their children, then obviously if you're sitting with a therapist, you're working through how to set boundaries, right? Healthy communication strategies, psychoeducation around how to help families who live in these joint family systems, working with family systems. Sometimes you have grandparents coming in to learn about, parenting here. So it's a multi-layered answer. I would not be doing justice if I said this is exactly how you do it, right? But it is a very valid concern that a lot of people bring to our attention.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for trying your best to answer that question. And it is true, not everything can be a one answer fits all. So for our third question, you mentioned that all behavior is communication. Will it always be clear communication? How can I understand this communication?
Right. Will it always be clear communication is the answer?
So I guess a two-part question. The first is, will it always be clear communication? The second is, how can I understand this communication?
Right. So, a lot of times if you think about how infants communicate with us, right? It's through behavior. Infant, like a 2-month-old will not say, I need to drink milk. They will cry, and that's their indication that they need to drink milk. And so if we've not developed our ability to communicate and talk about emotion and clearly state, Mommy, I'm angry, I need time out, things like that, we won't know how to do it. And so we will do it through behavior. So my belief, and I'm sure people have different belief systems, is in my experience, almost all behavior is communication, right? So even when I'm disengaged, I'm communicating, I want to be left alone, I'm tired, right? If I'm slamming the door, I'm communicating, I'm angry, leave me alone, right? So yes, I do believe I take behavior as an opportunity to communicate with children. How do I learn how to do this? As I said, there are strategies that we can learn. Like if I would Google the emotion coaching, I would reach out to someone that specializes in that. And before we work with that children, that's why I said in one of the slides that, the presentation, Mariam, is not to fix the child, right? It's here. It's my reflection inwards towards me. And so I want to learn to regulate. I want to learn when my child does that and I get so angry and I'm shouting, right? My anger has gone from 2 to 100 within seconds. What else can I do to make sure maybe anger is the right emotion there, right? But does it need to be at 90 where I'm no longer communicating and making sense to my child? Could it not be at 30, 40 where now I can say to my child, that angered me, right? But I can only do that if I work on self first. So emotional regulation, communication, self-care, all these things to work on me so that I can then present my best possible self. We can never be perfect in this, to my children.
Perfect. Thank you so much for answering that. I feel like I learned a lot from it. All right. Our next one is, how do I reflect on my parenting without falling into self-shaming or just becoming a submissive parent?
I think that was that one slide. The amount of shame work I do and guilt work I do, I think it's, I could say I probably specialize in that, right? We love to feel guilt and shame. It's like, sometimes I say to people, shame sometimes is that uninvited emotion, like my kid does something and I feel shame, right? I feel guilty. A lot of moms, even dads, go into, I'm not a good enough parent. I'm not, and I always say to people, okay, let's say we're socialized to think like that, and that's going to take some work to not think like that anymore, right? But what does that do for us? Like, does that propel you towards your goal? When I feel shameful for a little while, I might be like, okay, I want to get rid of this emotion, so I'm going to be a better parent, right? And for another 2 days, I will talk to my kid calmly. I will be a better parent, and then I'll go back to the same parenting style that I had before. So I want you to start asking yourself, like, what does shame do for me? Does it propel me towards my goal with my child, which for me, for example, would be connectivity, connecting with my child, right? And so how do we do that? We want to question shame. Are you the right emotion that's knocking on my door right now? Right. And again, I would say reach out to someone to help you with that. There's stuff that we do to help people to understand shame, to understand emotions, which emotion is the right emotion, how to decrease intensity of an emotion. There are strategies that you can engage in.
No, Jazakallah khair for answering that. And I love too how you like sent the question back of like, is this the emotion that's helping you? Because we never really challenge the emotion sometimes.
Right. And Mariam, to tell you the truth, with me, anytime I'm even doing therapy, I give it back and they say, but I come to you for an answer. And I always say to people, you're the expert, right? Like when I do parenting work, I'm not the expert helping you to parent, right? I believe parents are equipped innately to parent, but if we can help take the noise away, that fitra towards parenting, connecting and loving will show through. I can't teach you how to love, but I can help you take that noise away, right?
Oh, that's beautiful. It's like, that's like true empowerment right there. Like amazing. And you can absolutely say that you specialize in shaming. Amazing job. All right. So for our next one, it is, do you have some tips or tools on transitioning from more of the authoritative disciplinary parenting style that usually we equip when children are young to being more understanding as our children gain more autonomy as they get older?
Yeah. Any work by Adele LaFrance, EFFT, which is emotional focused family therapy, Gottman, the emotional coaching I said, all these things will guide you towards readings on, how to be more effective parents. Dan Siegel, that works with mindful parenting, is another one. He has a good book, it slips my mind, but I can send it to you guys to share with your audience. But again, if you start this self-reflective process, right? So this is not a critical process of what is wrong with me? Why am I doing this wrong? It's, when I do this, what's happening for me when my child does this? When I do this, is this effective for my child, right? Even if I mess up and I went from 0 to 100, right? I can go into shaming and I can go into guilt, or I can go, you know what, I messed up. How do I want to engage in this differently? Right? So that whole self-forgiving part, that I know there's some uneasiness around that self-compassion, self-forgiving, but I always tell, people I work with, like, fear only propels you to a certain distance. You'll run out of energy, right? But love and compassion and forgiveness is going to fuel you for a very long time, right? So if I can forgive my mistake and go, yep, that was horrible, Reena, now what? And I can start to engage with myself in a more self-compassion way, then I'll be more open to engaging in ways that change my parenting style.
That's amazing. And I fully agree. I know someone in the chat commented that like, this is amazing content, whether it's relatable for a parent or not. It's true. Like the things and the tools and tips you're giving, they're like, you can apply them to yourself at any age. So amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Our last question for now, if anyone has any more questions or we didn't get to your questions, you can always reach out to Reena herself. So this is around kind of the stigma with mental health, and how is it that you can tell someone they need to seek support? Like when you mentioned that we need, sometimes it's okay to seek support. How do you let someone know it's okay to seek support without it backfiring on you, or without them feeling that maybe you're pressuring them or that it's just a negative thing.
Right. And so I'm going to assume, because this was on family dynamics, I'm going to assume the person is asking for their family member, right? Because a lot of times if you say to somebody, oh, you get angry all the time, go get help, right? We use these words where they can be very demeaning, because this is how, we view mental health as, right? So I'm going to assume this person wants to get a family member to seek help. In validation, in the emotional coaching steps I talked to you about, and you can use this with children, you can use this with adults as well, right? It's very different when I say you get angry all the time, go get help, right? Versus saying to somebody, I can see how this anger really affects you and is really hurting you, right? I'm really wondering if we can get help together, if we can see someone, if I can help search for somebody. So you're connecting with that person, right? But I asked you a very important question. Are you safe for that person, right? The questions children usually ask, like, are you listening to me? Can I feel what I want to feel? Are you safe for me? If you can answer yes to those questions, then you're in a position to help that person seek help, right? But if you are unsafe for that person, where you are just throwing out, go seek therapy because you're angry, right? If you don't allow that person to have a certain level of emotional experience, that person is not going to listen to you. So we talk about building relationships. How do I become that person that can then convey to you, this is affecting you and it hurts me. I want to see you get better. Let's get help.
No, that's very true. And you're right. Even like in this situation, tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like it's emotional regulation as well. Like,
you got me.
Right?
That's my approach. Absolutely.
A lot.
People often say to me, Reena, is it all about emotions? And I'm like, in the way I work, it's always going to be about emotions. And it's not very easy for people in our community. We don't face emotions very easily, right? But once we figure it out, it can really propel relationships towards the positive side.
Yes, alhamdulillah, I fully agree. And now I know emotional regulation is the answer to like majority of the things. Love that.
Absolutely.
If you are okay to still answer questions, we do have just one more that we're hoping to push through it. We think it could be pretty helpful. It's pretty connected. It's more so, how do you create a boundary with a family member who has these like mental health issues?
How do you create a boundary? See, that is a tricky one. I would love to talk to this person to figure out what type of mental health issues we're dealing with, because again, there's different types, right? What have they tried? What has worked? What has not worked? But also, a lot of the times, let's say someone's going through something, we think, by giving in, we're being good to them, right? So we have lack of boundaries because we don't want to hurt that person. But sometimes boundaries are stern. Many times they have to be stable and regular and stern for them to actually exist, right? If you have a flimsy fence, no one's staying on the other side, right? So you can still be stern and loving, right? And so again, there are ways to do it, and I wouldn't be able to sort of get into the exact ways, but with someone that has mental health issues, again, that validation, I would look into Adele LaFrance's work on how to work with someone that has mental health issues and you're trying to get them the messaging. I will send you guys the link to send to your audience again, because what I'm talking to you about here, the validation, that safe space, is super important for somebody who has mental health issues.
No, that's very true. And I think too, you're right. In order to like notice that we need that boundary, we have to do a lot of reflecting. Amazing. Thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, Reena. It has been a pleasure for answering those questions and of course for having you with us this evening. Before I just transition on to our closing, I love your background.
Thank you.
It is amazing. Very welcoming, very warm.
The children's room.
I love it. So for all those who registered on Zoom, you'll be receiving a self-help guide created by Reena in your inbox soon, as you can see on the display. And for those who didn't register, you can access the resource guide on our website, www.nisahelpline.com/wellness. It's been shared in the chat for you all, so it's easy access. Before we wrap up, keep an eye on nisahelpline.ca or on our social media platforms. The series to get more information about our next workshop in the series on postpartum care and depression, which will be hosted by Esma Rahman. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all at our next workshop, inshallah. Also, please check out our new free mental health counseling service on our website. Thank you all once again for joining us this evening. Assalamu alaikum.